You know that moment when your stomach growls loud enough to scare the dog, and suddenly everything around you feels irritating? Then you take one bite of something sweet, chewy, crunchy, and suddenly the world doesn't seem so bad? That's the Snickers effect. It's the candy bar that's basically an attitude adjustment in a wrapper. But here's what most people don't realize. Snickers isn't just a candy bar. It's edible engineering, designed with the kind of detail usually reserved for rocket ships. Behind every bite is a factory that operates like a symphony, with peanuts, caramel, nougat, and chocolate all playing their part in perfect timing. And the scale of it all? Mind-blowing. We're talking about 2 million bars rolling off the line every single day in Waco, Texas. If aliens ever invade Earth, let's be real, this is the factory they're raiding first. It all started back in 1930 when Frank Mars, yes, the guy whose name is now stamped on half the candy aisle, decided to mash together nougat, caramel, and peanuts, then drown the whole creation in a layer of milk chocolate. It wasn't some boardroom brainstorm or scientific experiment, it was just a man chasing the perfect bite of candy. And then came the name. He looked at his family's racehorse, a horse called Snickers, and thought, yeah, that'll do. Imagine that moment, your horse is galloping around a dusty track, and decades later, its name is plastered on wrappers feeding millions of sugar cravings every single day. Not exactly the legacy most thoroughbreds get, but probably the tastiest one. Fast forward to today, and that humble horse-inspired bar has become a global heavyweight. Snickers is now sold in more than 80 countries, from tiny kiosks in Tokyo to vending machines in New York subway stations. Over 15 million bars are eaten every single day. 15 million. That's more than the population of some countries. Stack all those bars together and you could probably build a bridge made entirely of chocolate and nuts. And the calorie count? Let's just say it's astronomical. That many Snickers in one day could power a small city. Or at the very least, keep one particularly ambitious college dorm awake through finals week. It's not just candy anymore. It's a global fuel source disguised as a chocolate bar. Let's step into the factory because that's where the magic and the madness happens. The building is massive, 400,000 square feet of pure chocolatey chaos. It produces 65% of all Snickers eaten in the United States. Walk through those doors, and the air is so thick with the smell of roasted peanuts and warm chocolate that dentists could probably set up shop in the parking lot. The journey begins with chocolate, but not just any chocolate, the kind of chocolate that's been carefully engineered to survive life's little disasters. Because let's be honest, regular chocolate is weak. Hold it for more than a few seconds, and suddenly you're finger painting your phone screen with melted cocoa. Leave it in your pocket? Congratulations, you've invented laundry day. Snickers chocolate, though, is built different. It's crafted to melt at exactly 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, your body temperature, which means it stays solid in your hand, even on a warm afternoon. But the second it hits your tongue, it gives up the fight and transforms into silky velvet. That balance isn't luck, it's chocolate chemistry at its finest. Think of it as science with a sweet tooth, designed so you never have to choose between clean fingers and a perfect bite. It all starts with cocoa beans, the real backbone of this whole operation. They're shipped in from Ecuador and Madagascar, places where the soil and climate work together like nature's own chocolate factory. When they show up at the plant, they're packed into 150-pound burlap sacks. And these things don't look like boring supply bags. They look like treasure chests, straight out of a pirate movie, only instead of gold doubloons, they're stuffed with the promise of chocolate bars. Once inside, the sacks are torn open and dumped into machines the size of small cars. These beasts crack the beans open with bursts of air pressure separating the good stuff, the nibs, from the outer shells. It's violent but necessary. The shells are tossed aside while the nibs, the precious heart of the cocoa bean, move on to the next stage. That stage is roasting. The nibs travel through industrial ovens set to 280 degrees Fahrenheit for exactly 35 minutes. It's basically a chocolate spa day, only hotter and louder. Get it wrong and the flavor suffers. Roast them too long and you're chewing on something that tastes like bitter coffee grounds. Skip the time by a few minutes and they're bland, lifeless, and a disappointment to candy lovers everywhere. But get it right? The factory fills with an aroma so rich and hypnotizing, It could probably stop traffic outside. The roasted nibs are ground into chocolate liquor, which sounds like the kind of drink you'd order at a questionable bar, but it's actually bitter sludge. Nobody in their right mind would sip it. This sludge heads to the conching room, where sugar, milk powder, and more cocoa butter are mixed in. For 12 hours straight, mechanical arms churn the mixture at 160 degrees. 12 hours. Think about that next time you get impatient waiting for your instant noodles. When it finally emerges, it's smoother than silk pajamas. But smooth isn't enough. Chocolate has to be tempered. Heated to 115, cooled to 84, then brought back up to 88. It's a little temperature tango that forces cocoa butter crystals into perfect formation. Do it wrong and the chocolate turns dull and gray. Do it right and you get that glossy finish and crisp snap when you break a bar. That sound isn't just chocolate breaking, it's science celebrating. While chocolate gets its spa treatment, peanuts are training like athletes. And this isn't just a handful of nuts. The factory burns through 21 acres of peanuts every single day. They arrive in 2,000-pound bags, lifted 30 feet into the air, and dumped onto oscillating conveyor belts. These belts don't just move forward, they shimmy side to side, roasting every peanut evenly like a giant nutty dance floor. Then they enter the roasting tunnel. Picture a 150-foot-long oven cranked to 350 degrees. Peanuts roll through for exactly 30 minutes. Too short, they're raw. Too long, they're charcoal. Sensors keep the temperature within 2 degrees, and every 15 minutes, technicians pull samples. Imagine being that guy. Sorry, can't talk. I've got peanuts to taste. That's the job description. Once roasted, the peanuts cool, get a fine mist of sea salt, and roll down conveyors like tiny golden nuggets headed for caramel paradise. Now, caramel. If there's one ingredient in this whole process that loves drama, it's caramel. You don't just throw some sugar in a pot and hope for the best. No, this is an operation big enough to scare your home kitchen stove. It all starts in industrial vats the size of hot tubs, about 800 pounds of ingredients at a time. Corn syrup, butter, condensed milk, sugar, and a touch of salt all get measured out with surgeon-level precision. Ratios have to be perfect. If you're even 1% off, you don't end up with caramel. You end up with something better suited for paving roads. Once everything's inside, the mixture begins to heat slowly. Giant mechanical paddles keep it moving constantly, because if it sits still for even a moment, the bottom will scorch. Gradually, the temperature creeps upward until it hits 240 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the sweet spot, literally. This is when the sugars begin to caramelize, shifting from pale and bland to rich, golden, and complex. But they don't stop there. The whole bubbling mix gets transferred into vacuum kettles, held at a steady 250 degrees. The vacuum environment isn't for show. It prevents scorching and makes sure every ounce of the mixture cooks evenly. Imagine hundreds of gallons of molten caramel swirling like liquid gold. The smell alone could lure you across the factory floor, even if it meant risking third-degree burns just to dip a finger in. The entire process takes about 45 minutes from start to finish, which, in candy factory time, feels like an eternity. When it's finally done, the caramel isn't just dumped into a bin. It's carefully transferred into holding tanks, kept warm at 180 degrees, the perfect temperature for what's coming next. Because soon, those roasted peanuts will make their grand entrance, and together, they'll form the sticky, nutty crown of every Snickers bar. Nougat, though, that's the diva. Nougat is fragile, moody, and demands perfect conditions. It starts with corn syrup, sugar, salt, and water heated to 250 degrees. Then, while egg whites are whipped into a fluffy frenzy, the hot syrup is drizzled in like a slow-motion lava flow. Get the timing wrong, and you've got sugary scrambled eggs. Done right, it transforms into chewy, airy nougat that can hold its own against caramel and peanuts. Then it's cooked again to 270 degrees to lock in texture. Humidity is its sworn enemy. Too much moisture in the air, and the whole batch collapses like a bad souffle. That's why the nougat room has its own climate control, like a celebrity with a rider demanding no humidity, no brown M&Ms. Once nougat hits the sweet spot, Peanut butter is folded in at 195 degrees, warm enough to blend, cool enough not to ruin the structure. The mixture is then rolled out by chilled steel drums at 24 degrees, flattening it into smooth slabs that look like giant marshmallows in disguise. And now, the big moment. Nougat slabs roll along the main conveyor, waiting like a stage for their co-stars. Peanuts tumble into molten caramel, swirling together until every nut is coated. That sticky mix is poured over the nougat like golden lava. A pressing roller seals them into a single slab, which then cruises through a cooling tunnel chilled to 65 degrees. This firms everything up so it can survive slicing. Then comes the slitter, armed with 19 blades, slicing the slab into 38 strips. Guillotine blades drop, chopping them into uniform 4.5-inch bars. Suddenly, you've got the skeleton of a Snickers, naked, chewy, and begging for chocolate. And chocolate delivers. First, bars glide through a shallow pool, coating their bottoms. Then they roll under a literal waterfall of tempered chocolate, draping them in silky armor. Excess drains through the mesh conveyor, leaving the perfect layer. The bars pass over vibrating grates that jiggle out bubbles and even out the coating. And before the chocolate sets, a roller draws that little swirl on top. It's not just decoration, it's proof the process worked. That tiny wave says, yes, this bar survived the chocolate gauntlet. The bars head into one last cooling tunnel, where air circulates to set the chocolate into glossy perfection. Then they hit packaging. Machines crank out 1,000 wrapped bars per minute, sealing each one tight against air and moisture. Random bars are pulled for checks, weight, shine, and of course taste. Somewhere in that factory, someone's job is literally biting into Snickers and calling it research. Not a bad gig if you can get it. And that's the wild truth. Snickers isn't just a candy bar. It's acres of peanuts roasted to perfection. It's caramel treated like chemistry. It's nougat that throws a tantrum if the weather's wrong. It's chocolate tempered like fine art, all coming together in a factory so precise that it could probably build spacecraft if it wanted. Instead, it builds something better. 2 million candy bars a day, designed to shut your stomach up and make life taste good for a few glorious bites. So next time you tear open that wrapper, don't just think of it as a snack. Think of it as edible engineering at its finest. But also, don't think too hard. Just eat it. Because while the science is impressive, the joy is simple. Peanuts, caramel, nougat, and chocolate. A perfect bite that's been winning over the world since 1930. If you enjoyed this little trip inside the bar that cures bad moods, stick around. There are plenty more untold stories behind the foods we all take for granted. And hey, if you want more of these behind-the-scenes journeys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments what food you'd love to see uncovered next.